Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Now apparently Manny Pacquiao versus Terrence Crawford could be a go for later this year in Bahrain in the Middle East. So it is Bob Arum who has explained that it is likely that that fight could go ahead and there are serious talks to stage it in the Middle East. Now obviously the fight we really wanted to see Terrence Crawford in was the Errol Spence fight, but it doesn't seem like that fight is anywhere close to being made because of politics, because Errol Spence will want a comeback fight obviously after that car crash. So ultimately Errol Spence isn't going to be fighting Terrence Crawford anytime soon. While that is the fight we would rather see. And I mean, I don't know where Manny Pacquiao fits in the current landscape. He's 41 years old, but I mean, age is just a number. I mean, we saw what he'd done to Keith Thurman. But ultimately, where does Manny Pacquiao fit in? Because there was some talk about Manny Pacquiao should be only fighting the fights he wants to fight. The young guys should fight each other and leave Manny Pacquiao alone. But he's world champion. What are they supposed to do? Just leave him there? Leave the WBA world title in the hands of a legend and not fight him, not challenge for that world title, not unify? So what are they supposed to do? Not fight him? So ultimately they have to, because that's a piece of the puzzle that they want to take on the road to becoming undisputed welterweight champion. So if Manny Pacquiao does fight Terrence Crawford, then Crawford has an opportunity to strengthen his position in a fight with Errol Spence, to make Errol Spence kind of say, okay, I have to fight Terrence Crawford. If I want to be considered number one, then I have to fight him, because at the moment, Errol Spence is number one. Terrence Crawford is probably number two, maybe, or I guess you could dispute Manny Pacquiao being number two, but ultimately that's where the standing is. And the reason why Errol Spence is number one is because he has the better resume in the welterweight division. Mikey Garcia, Kell Brook, Sean Porter, two world champions in there as well. So ultimately that is why he is number one. Terrence Crawford might beat Errol Spence. I think he could do, but that doesn't mean that Terrence Crawford can be considered as number one, because his best win at welterweight is Amir Khan, a kind of faded Amir Khan. So Terrence Crawford needs those names on his record. He needs the WBA world title to strengthen his position in the talks about who is number one. If you create that debate, who is number one, Errol Spence or Terrence Crawford, that is when Errol Spence will be forced to take that fight. At the moment, he doesn't really need to, because he is already considered number one. Let's be real, you have to kind of consider Errol Spence as number one because he has the better resume in the welterweight division, holds two world titles as well, unified champion. So Terrence Crawford needs to strengthen his position in order to have that fight made, in order to force Errol Spence to make that fight. And he will, if he believes that he is not number one, and he will want to prove himself. So in that case, Errol Spence will have to fight Terrence Crawford if he wants to be considered number one in the welterweight division. At the moment, he doesn't have to fight Terrence Crawford to be considered number one, because his resume speaks for itself and his world titles. Terrence Crawford won his world title from Jeff Horn and has defended it a couple of times. Amir Khan is in there as well, but as I said, Amir Khan wasn't at his best in that fight with Terrence Crawford. So Crawford needs a big name. He needs Manny Pacquiao, because I don't believe the Errol Spence fight will be made unless he has a stronger position in the welterweight division. Because what's the gain for Errol Spence of fighting Terrence Crawford? Yeah, the WBO world title, maybe a good paycheck, but is it really worth risking his position as number one and making the kind of money he is, fighting maybe someone who is easier than Terrence Crawford? Is it worth risking that if he doesn't gain all that much from it? If there are clear disputes about him being number one and Terrence Crawford now being number one because he's beat Manny Pacquiao and is now WBO, WBA Super unified champion, as well as Errol Spence being a unified champion, then there is a clear case for Terrence Crawford to be number one. And as I said, Terrence Crawford might beat Errol Spence, but you have to consider Errol Spence as number one because he has two world titles, has the better resume at welterweight. That is why Errol Spence is number one at the moment. But you create that dispute, you create that discussion about Errol Spence maybe not being number one because Terrence Crawford is also a unified champion, has a win over the legend Manny Pacquiao. Then you start to create doubt about Errol Spence being number one in the division, and he will have to fight Terrence Crawford to be considered number one again. And that is what will force that fight to happen. So that is why this is a good thing. That is why Terrence Crawford should be going after Manny Pacquiao, because the Errol Spence fight at the moment is a dead end. So Manny Pacquiao seems to be his only option at a big fight. And that is what we want to see from Terrence Crawford. He is too good to be in lower level fights. He needs to be in there with the best. Then you will see the best from Terrence Crawford. His previous performance wasn't all that great from Terrence Crawford. But you put him in there with Amir Khan, a live opponent, a former world champion, someone who will beat him if he is not at his best. That is when you will get the best out of Terrence Crawford. And in that event, Terrence Crawford is so skilled and so talented in the ring that the only ones who benefit from that are the fans, because we get to see a great fight against someone at the top level against another fighter who is also at the top level. So those are the fights we want to see. But it seems like the only route for Terrence Crawford to Errol Spence is to try and come through Manny Pacquiao first. And it seems like that fight is in serious talks according to Bob Arum, Terrence Crawford's promoter. That fight could happen in the Middle East later this year. But guys, the important thing is, what are your thoughts? Make sure you drop your thoughts in the comments below, click a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new. Thanks guys.